Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody's joining the crew. We got just one ring, let we rule them all. Hope you'd remember your towels. Get your Ulu fingers and your needler guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Use Valerian steel if it will get you to come. To the big tank. To the big tank. The Rocky Mountain Big Tank.
Hi, I'm Guy.
Hi, I'm Troy.
And this is Geek Tank.
Your virtual size driving school podcast.
Podcast.
Background.
Yeah. So we are going to talk today about driving pet peeves.
Or
I'm going
pets.
to switch over to the thing here. Yeah. And then once I get cats out of the way. So we started sort of with a concept of doing pet peeves. Mm-hmm. And then we moved on to, you know what I really hate is this and this. And we started all these things about driving. Both of us are ex-driving instructors, which is an interesting coincidence, coinky dink. So
several years apart, but still, you ended up there eventually.
Yeah, I had to, it took me some time, had to get more hero worship as time went on.
Right. Well, the one fellow that I worked with as a coworker at the driving school that I was part of, when he went on to start his own school, eventually he left the state and he offered to sell me the school so I could become the owner of it. But I really didn't want that much responsibility.
Right.
And it's a lot of work.
Money.
Yeah. Yep. And it's, I like being a driving instructor part-time, not really full-time.
It's going to be called George Tank now.
George Tank.
George Tank.
It's probably a George Tank out there already.
Probably. So. I liked being a driving instructor too. I enjoyed it. If I do go back to the school, because I left because of COVID. Mostly
you even did some lessons and tests during COVID.
Yeah, I did a few lessons, and then I realized they weren't going to keep me safe, and I knew that I was going to end up with COVID somewhere, and I didn't have insurance through them, so I was like, well, I'm going to end up getting sick, and then they're not going to pay for it, and
you'll pay for it.
And so I was like, well, this doesn't sound like a good plan. Mm-mm. But if I do go back, though, I'm going to do classroom only, I believe.
Did they have a difference in the price that they paid
for classroom
versus behind the wheel?
Not really.
It was the same.
Yes, actually, classroom paid better. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually the school I was in had that similar, and I brought it up to the manager. I'm like, the behind the wheel is more dangerous than classroom, and so I managed to actually get everybody raises by using logic. But because they're coming from the pure, it's like, well, we can fit 30 people in a classroom and we can only fit one person in the car. So we're making more money from the classroom. So we'll pay you more money for that. But eventually those kids go to the behind the wheel. So it works out if you shift it around. There's very few students I had that did not do behind the wheel through the school because it was all a package deal.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. He took his test during COVID. You mean your driver test? Oh, because you had, yeah, gotcha. I'm like, but that makes sense. And I don't know how you could have made a car safe. I mean, 2 hours, 2-hour sessions, even with masks, there's only one way I could think of, and that's to keep the windows down the entire time.
Get that bubble car that they had in Homer Simpson created an episode where he designed a car and there's a bubble in the back, so you'd be in the bubble and the driver would be up front.
Yeah.
So what's the scariest / weirdest thing that happened to you as a driving instructor?
I had a kid that didn't know his left from his right, which I didn't think was that big of a deal. until he went out onto 44th into oncoming traffic. Crossed all 4 lanes before I could grab the wheel. And then I grabbed the wheel and yanked him back over. And then all of the people in the traffic in 44th had all, of course, naturally sped up because student driver. So I ended up cutting off traffic back in
So he was supposed to go right, but he went left into the traffic.
He was supposed to go right onto 44th because my school was on 44th right at Harlan.
Okay.
He was supposed to go right.
Because it's one way.
He didn't know which side of the road he was supposed to be on, so he did the British/Japanese side and went all the way across all 4 lanes into oncoming traffic, directly into oncoming traffic. And I was like, well, that sucks. So I had to yank him back onto. Oh man, it was brutal. What about you?
Well, the weirdest thing was I had gotten the student to the parking lot where we were going to do our driving, and he started the car, and immediately after he started his car, threw a rod, like right through part of it when the oil started pouring everywhere. And I'm like, lesson's over for the day. So I had to call his dad and have him come back and get him, reschedule, and they had to call a tow truck to come get the car. But I'd never seen a car just like commit seppuku like that. It's just weird.
That's what you get for not changing your oil.
The cars were regularly serviced. I think it was just way too.
It was your car?
No, it was the school's car.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was your school's car.
So don't know what exactly happened to have that happen, but I'm just glad it happened in the parking lot and not while like flying down the highway.
Right, as we were like, for drive 3, because we did 3 2-hour drives, and the first one was in the little neighborhood right behind the school, and then the second one I took them kind of out and around Denver. I'd take them downtown, and I kind of put them through because there's a lot of. My favorite route was to go downtown, and then I'd go down 32nd because that goes all the way through, and then it heads into town on the viaduct and then goes by Coors Field. Then I make them make a right on Broadway. I make them make a left on 17th, because when you're on Broadway, once you get into that part of town, it's a one-way. And so they come up and I make them take a left on 17th. And if they sit and wait at the red light, I go, what are you waiting for? Light's red. I'm like, yeah, but you're making a left. We can't make a left on red light. This is a one-way. That's a one-way. Usually, because my whole thought is these things are easier to teach if you do that.
Right.
So I love Broadway and 17th. That was perfect for that. Then I'd make them come back around. Then I'd make them come up Spear. And then I'd have them turn right on Wazee, because that is the most confusing, screwed up intersection I can even imagine downtown, because it's got Auraria, Market, and Wazee, and you have to take a right in the right turn lane that makes it look like you're making a right onto Auraria into oncoming traffic. So it's like so confusing. Your mom used to work at the building right there. So I have been driving that particular corner since I was like 17 years old, because she'd call, I forgot my book, bring me my book, or whatever. And so I'd have to drive in there, and I always drove through that intersection. I never gave it a second thought until my wife drove down. And she's like, who designed this thing? And I'm like, I never really thought of how confusing it is. So I started taking my kids through it.
Yeah, the school I taught at was in Lakewood, so we were halfway between downtown and halfway from Lookout Mountain. And so depending on the student's skill level, if they were skilled enough, I would take them up Lookout Mountain and then teach them how to use the lower gears in an automatic when coming down a hill. Since you can't downshift like you would in a manual, you can still use your automatic and go into second gear.
Yep.
So
it's funny that you would take them down Lookout Mountain. That's exactly what I would do too. I take them up I-70, because we were at 44th. So you get onto Wadsworth and you head north to 70. I'd get on 70 and then I'd head out, and that would where I'd teach them to merge and zipper merges and all of that stuff. And then we go up into the mountains, then to Lookout Mountain, then we come down the backside of Lookout Mountain. right there into Golden. And it's the same thing. I was teaching them to brake properly and not brake through turns and things like that. And at first I taught them how to downshift, but then I realized nobody will ever do that. That's not something they're going to remember. So instead it's a difference of opinion between teachers.
Yeah.
Because you're not the only one that taught them to downshift. So for me, what I was more worrying about was how to operate in turns and curves, brake before the curve, then coast through it, and then accelerate out the other side of the curve. Because that works both going downhill, because then you don't burn your brakes, and it works in snow and ice.
Yeah.
So,
I think we taught that just just flat normal driving.
Yeah, I was going to teach them to drift, but that a little bit harder to do.
Yeah. Brent asking. Now I did have
Toyota Corolla.
I did have a couple of students that were really good at driving, and so on our last behind the wheel lesson, there was this church off of Wadsworth past 285. After you drive down, it's just before you get to that Walmart area there, and they have like 3 giant parking lots because this is a ridiculously large church. So I loved using their parking lots because nobody was ever there during weekdays. And I would teach some of the really good drivers how to do a J-turn. And I'm like, okay, so what I'm about to teach you is a secret. You can't tell your parents. This is just for fun.
Told the whole world.
I know. Well, I'm not a driving instructor.
You're doing
anymore.
it right now.
I'm pretty sure whatever the statute of limitation is for it, even if it was, I don't think it was even illegal, but maybe trespassing.
It's funny. I used to downshift, and of course, I drive manual. In fact, it's getting harder and harder to find one. But my 2020 Jetta is a 6-speed, and it's the first 6-speed I've ever had. I love this thing, but I don't downshift anymore because I was talking to my buddy who works on cars, and his statement was, "I can replace brake pads in an hour." Most cars nowadays, in order to replace your clutch, I have to take the engine out. So you decide which is easier to burn out, which you should be burning out. So
I guess it depends on how often you do it. If you drive the mountains every day, then
that's a different story. Because then but the point was that 4 brake pads is like $200 worth of work. But a new clutch pushes it into the 1500 level.
And I would imagine if you're really sloppy with it too, and you're just grinding it every time, it's gonna burn it out fast.
But but when he said that, I realized, I see what you're talking about. I mean, I still use downshifting, but what I tend to do is upshift up to like 3rd gear or whatever, and then hold at 3rd gear on the way down the other side of the mountain. Or the other side of the hill or whatever. Because generally speaking, in this neighborhood, in this area, I don't get to 4th or 5th gear that often, So if I'm already in the gear, I'll hold, but I don't downshift.
Now, technically on a mountain too, if you just keep it in 2nd gear, you don't have to switch in any other gears. And if you get to where you want to go faster and it's going down, you just hold the clutch in and gravity will do the work for you.
I love that. And that's the best part about a manual is I can just put it in neutral and then just coast. And so, I do that probably more often than I do.
Brent, who's watching us here, mentioned that he got to drive backwards in a parking lot. I would use that same church parking lot. They have these nice little islands in the parking lot. So I'd have kids do figure 8s around the islands. And then I would have them do it backwards. And they're like, what? I'm like, you just did it forwards. I'm just asking you to do what you just did backwards.
And always you had that one kid that went in circles because he could not figure out how to reverse the wheel. And there was always that one kid who just kept going in circles. And you're like,
anyone who's ever driven a boat understands going backwards in a car because you got the same turn radius.
Yeah.
But in any case, go ahead.
My grandma had a boat. That's what I tested on. It was a 1977 Delta 88.
So
and they made me parallel park that thing.
David joined our chat window here, and he's asking what's worse for the environment, cars or cows driving cars?
I feel like it's definitely cows driving cars.
Hmm.
There is nothing worse than bovine behind the wheel.
I don't know the ratio of cows to cars. I'm guessing there's more cars than there are cows, but I really don't know.
Yeah. The oddly, if he's talking about environmental danger, I actually have looked that up.
Oh.
And cows and their methane, which is one of the things, is actually a very small portion of what's going into our atmosphere. And actually, strangely enough, cars are not as big of a threat either. It's not the cars that are the problem. It's the power plants. The power plants are putting out something like 2 to 3 tons of CO2 every week.
Are those power plants run by cows?
So
gassy
those
cows.
are cower plants.
Cower plants. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And all the cows also there, they band and huddle and they hang out under tables a lot.
Well, they say there's like 2 to 3 cars per every family household, but I don't think there's 2 to 3 cows for every family household.
No, there's not.
I probably eat 2 to 3 cows, but
I feel like I do too. I wonder how many cows I've eaten in my time.
More than that we should ever know.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's go nuclear. Oh, so Brent knows what I'm talking about when I say we've gone nuclear. That was so cool. On a C5 Galaxy, no less. That's the way to do it. Okay, we are talking about For All Mankind, which I am horribly addicted to. And the
what's that on again?
Apple.
Okay, I don't have that.
No, but we do, and we
can OBS it.
Yeah, we can. Right. I might. I just might. I ended up binge watching first season. I don't think I binge watched anything in years, but that's exactly what I did. I binge watched first season. It was just so addictive.
Well, you probably binge watched. Sorry, the name's running away from my brain right now. Discovery, like the second time.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I don't count Star Trek.
Oh, okay. Well, there's so few.
Because
there's so few Star Treks you can binge watch because there's so many.
Yeah, I can't binge watch Star Trek because I've
Discovery is so new.
Yeah, well, but I had to watch it on first run, so you can't binge watch it because it was only coming out Thursday nights.
Well, you binge watch it the second time.
Oh yeah, well, that's
you marathon through it. So we talking about driving and pet peeves. So for me the pet peeve that is least dangerous of the 2 pet peeves is not using the turn signal, which I think it's weird. It seems like everybody complains about people not using turn signals, but there's so many people not using turn signals. It's like, are the people complaining also not using their turn signals? So
this is something that actually I found fascinating by being a driving instructor. Because with turn signals, the old joke is wherever I live, the people here just don't ever use their turn signals. But I have come to the conclusion that that's a red light thing. It's that the white crow fallacy or whatever, the if you see something happen once that's bad, because it's a negative impact, it feels equivalent of 100 times. But as the instructor not driving and having to watch everybody around to make sure nobody was going to hit us, I actually had the opportunity to see how many times people use their signal versus not, and discovered that it's about 80% of the time people use their signal. And I mean, it wasn't very often that I ended up saying, watch out for him. He's coming over here and he's not signaling. You know what I mean?
No, I would bet 50% of the people that use their signal used it way later than they should have, like halfway into the lane merge.
For those of you who are wondering, it is 100 yards before the turn or after the previous turn. So if you have 2 streets that are too close together, you wait till you pass this street to turn on your turn signal. But it's 100 yards. Take a right. So yeah, people were way late like that was something I had to pound out of some of my kids. They just really were into that.
I found that.
And yes, David, you can fill your car with burgers and fart with impunity now.
And your burgers can fart with impunity.
We're just saying.
Yep. But the turn signal thing I find most annoying when you're waiting to merge into traffic, and if you know the person's going to turn where you're coming out of, you know you could go, but you're politely waiting because you think they're going to pass in front of you. But then, as they get right up, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to turn now."
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's a big deal.
But it's not like it's going to cause that's not necessarily going to cause a crash. But there are times where not using its turn signal could easily cause a crash.
Yeah, Brent made a good point. I mean, I gotta say, you want to learn empathy on the road, be a motorcyclist. That will teach you empathy in a big hurry. People can't see you. You are in blind spots. Oh, it's brutal. That'll learn you, as my grandma would say.
Something I haven't seen anybody do, which means somebody has to do it besides me. I can't be the only one doing it. But when I'm in a parking spot and I have to back up, I use my turn signal for the direction that I'm backing into. And I almost never see anybody do that.
I've never seen anyone else do that. I did that for a time because I had observed you doing it, and I thought it was a good idea. And then I realized I just confused people, so I stopped doing it. That doesn't mean you should stop doing it.
Right.
That was my option. That was my observation from my point of view. So
to me, it's one more extra thing to get people to pay attention, because a lot of people seem to either ignore or not.
Self-driving cars. We'll get to that. We will get to that, David.
Or there people don't realize that the white lights mean the car's about to back up.
Mm-hmm.
So
I keep telling my kids, look at our trains. Everything is set up this way. White is forward, red is back. And so that's how you can tell whether you're in front of a car or behind a car in the motion of travel. So trains, all of our trains have two sets of lights. They've got white lights on top and red lights on the bottom. And when the train goes this way, the white lights come on. And then when it turns around and goes this way, the red lights turn on. And you can see it. It's just working that way. And it works that way with our cars too. Mm-hmm. That's why we make our reverse lights white. Everybody thinks it is because it's lighting up the area behind you. But the truth is it's a law that cars must have white lights going in the direction of travel.
So when you're going in reverse, white lights
the direction of travel.
So my biggest one, and this is the more dangerous one, is people following too close.
Yep.
Because they just don't get the 3 to 5 second rule. And that's kind of where we came upon this, because we just had a pretty good snowfall a couple days ago, and I passed 3 fender benders driving my kid to school.
And you were saying that when I was in Texas, I went to go get medication for my dad, and I had to go into Conroe, which is I think it's a 20 minute drive. In that span of 20 minutes, I saw 3 accidents, and all of them were following too close. Mm-hmm. That's all they were doing. Like, one was this really nice Camaro, and he was following this little like Econo box, and the Econo box suddenly decided he needed to make a left turn. And so he started to slow down to move over and into the turn lane, and the oncoming traffic blocked him. So he turned back into traffic, but he didn't get all the way out of the lane, but the Camaro had punched it. And so when he came back in, it was wham, right into it. And I was like, yep, you were falling too close to begin with. But because that's the whole point. And like what Troy and I were saying before was, we know that that's the thing. Everybody gets out and, well, he shouldn't have stopped. Mm-hmm. You know? And it's like, the guy had to avoid danger. So that's, you're giving enough space that he can avoid danger. He shouldn't have to go, well, I've got no room behind me. I guess head-on collision's what it's going to be. You know, that should never be a decision you force. Right. So I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's falling too close is brutal, dude.
It is, and it's the 3 to 5 second rule. For those who don't know, it's the car in front of you as it passes a stationary object like a telephone pole. In your mind, you go 1001, 1002, 1003, and if you've passed that stationary spot before you hit 1003, you're following too close.
Yep.
Now it's called 3 to 5 because the closer you get to 5 seconds, the safer you are with it. And I would tell my students, the worse the weather, increase it.
Yep.
So in snow, you want to at least be doing 5 seconds behind that car.
You do not want to be 3 car lengths.
Yeah, the issue with car lengths is the nice thing about the seconds is it self-regulates. So if I'm going 10 miles per hour and you're going 10 miles per hour, I'm going to hit that 3-second spot much sooner. Much later than if we were both going 50 miles per hour. So the distance is going to be closer at 10 miles per hour than it's going to be at 50 because I'm timing the seconds to hitting that same spot.
And the way we sort of looked at it in our school was it takes about half a second for your eyes to register something has happened, send the message to the brain, and have that message go down to your foot. And it takes another half a second for your foot to come off of the gas pedal and onto the brake pedal. And then you need 2 seconds to stop that vehicle. And so you need all 3 of those seconds to do it. And that's why we chose 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm. More if your tires are bald, if your vehicle's
you're
heavy.
going to add more if you've got any kind of trouble with your vehicle.
If you're a motorcycle, you're going to stop much faster than the car behind you, which is something to be aware of because that car can't stop as fast as you.
I was just watching r/road cams and some idiot in his bike tried to brake check this rig. I was like, what were you thinking? The rig managed to stop before he ran him over completely. Ran over the bike though, knocked the rider completely off and like 50 feet down the road, and then ran over the bike. And he gets up and he's yelling and mad, and I'm like, you cut off a rig and then brake checked him.
The important thing about the second rule too is once you get the concept, you can pay attention to what's happening behind you. And you go, oh, this car is really close behind me. I'm going to give myself even a few more seconds so I don't have to stop quickly and I can kind of catch the car behind me.
That is exactly what you can do.
And butterfly your brakes, as I call them.
Yeah, I keep telling people, I said, you do 3 things, and I can guarantee you will get out of 90% of all accidents. 1, follow the 3-second rule. That's an important thing. 2, look both ways before crossing a street. That's one of the things that I taught my kids. Every time you come up on an intersection, just like as if you were walking across it, you look both ways. You don't have to slow down. You don't have to stop. Just look both ways, and if you do that, then when that guy finally just spaces out and runs the red light, you've tagged him and you'll hit your brakes. And
using a 3 to 5 second rule, you can use that of am I getting close to my 3 to 5 seconds of that intersection? Because that's when I'm going to hit that intersection. You want to know with enough time to respond to the situation that's happening. And there definitely were times where somebody ran a red light or ran a stop sign, pulled out in front of somebody, and my kids were doing their job and they stopped, or they weren't doing their job and I hit the brake on my side for them.
Right.
So, it's check your intersections. And I advise left, center, right is how they taught us, because left is the closest lane of traffic to you.
Yeah, turn to your left first, just like you would crossing a street.
Yep.
If you cross the street, you look this way and then this way. Look to the left and look to the right.
What's your third thing?
So the third thing is check your rear view mirror. And check it every time you hit the brakes.
Yep.
Because that's one of the biggest things is if you are, anytime you make any kind of, actually I should say, check your rear view mirror anytime you make a sudden maneuver. Always check your rear view. Make sure the guy behind you has seen you and is aware. Do you remember Vicky in our group, Troy?
Yes, she got hit behind.
She got hit hard. She got hit so hard, she got a concussion from the rear bumper of her car because the car folded up and then smacked her in the back of the head with the rear bumper. That's how bad she got hit. She got a concussion from the rear bumper of her own car. It was brutal. I mean, that was a rough one.
And she had
It's
hundreds of dollars of martial arts weapons in the trunk that were destroyed. Luckily, none of the swords came up and impaled her.
And what had happened was, just like Brent was saying, eastbound I-70, really early in the morning during morning rush hour, sun was in their eyes and everything like that. But they stopped at Havana. Traffic had come to a stop at Havana. And the truck, the semi that was in the lane, just continued on. And the guy had dropped a cigarette into the floorboard and reached down to grab it. And when he looked up, everybody was stopped. He hit his brakes, but he still hit her at something like 50 miles an hour and just folded it like a can, opened up her car like a can. And I think of that regularly because if you're the last person in line, watch your rearview mirror.
Yeah, when you're
stopping,
when you're coming to a stop, if possible, you want to be thinking about where can I go if I have to go before it's time to go anywhere. So if the light's still red and the guy behind me is not stopping, do I have room to go up onto the sidewalk or go between these cars? So it's very, when they say defensive driving, they mean like super defensive driving. And you got to be prepared with escape routes.
Oh yeah, but I mean, you do those three things, and I can guarantee you'll get out of 90% of all the normal wrecks that we have.
The one student that reported back to me this happened during the span of the 1 week class. He had pulled in to get gas at a gas station, and as he was stopping, he checked his rearview mirror and he saw the person coming in behind him really fast. He stepped on the gas and moved out of the way, and they ran right into like one of those safety poles next to the gas thing. But he's like, yeah, they would have hit me if I hadn't moved.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, I'm glad you were paying attention. So.
Yep. Look both ways before crossing the street. Check your rearview mirror every time you do maneuvers, and 3-second rule or more. Those three things, if you do those three things, I can guarantee you'll get out of 90% of accidents. And I say that to the parents of all of my kids because they're like, we're paying you an awful lot of money. What are you teaching them? And I'm like, these three things. And they're like, I never thought of that.
My students would say that their parents would get mad at them because they would do all the bad habits and the kids would try to correct them.
Yep. That happened too.
And I found it's harder to teach an adult than it is to teach a kid because they've already developed the bad habits and they don't want to get out of them. My brother would do the thing where he'd reach up under the steering wheel like that to turn.
Yeah, we call hooking the wheel.
And
I hooked the wheel too. And then one of the teachers in Thornton was an ex-cop. And he was doing the ride along with me right off the bat, because of course you join these classes. The first thing they do is
test you
with an instructor. And I hooked the wheel and he goes, don't hook the wheel. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. And so I hooked the wheel again. He's like, you forgot to not hook the wheel. Look, here's the deal. That airbag goes off at 250 miles an hour. What it'll do is break the radius and the ulna and then shove it into your face. And I was like, he's like, I had to pull bones out of this guy's face once. And I was like, I never hooked the wheel again.
Right. Also, your ability to turn the other direction in an emergency is hindered by the amount of time, by time that can make a difference versus doing the paintbrush method. So
she appreciates it. Anyway, yeah.
Did you make a bad joke?
I totally did.
I thought you did. I'm glad somebody was there to make the bad joke.
You should always do hand over hand.
Like we do. They do a paintbrush thing where you never cross.
That's both of those are acceptable, hand over hand, or as we call push pull, or you call it paintbrush.
Yeah,
push pull works. I don't get the speed out of push pull.
Oh, you've got to anticipate enough to come down to the 6 o'clock position.
They didn't want us teaching our kids to be on the underside of the wheel.
Oh, okay.
So we would do push pull for small adjustments, and then you do hand over hand for going around a corner.
And then you stick one of those doorknobs on the steering wheel for really tight turns when you have to just crank it. Wax on, wax off. So
every time my kid would do this, I would say, so if that wheel gets hit, where's it going? And who's got control of it? It was like, so
I think one of the things that amazed kids the most was it's like after the turn, they would be struggling to turn the wheel back. I'm like, no, just gently release your grip. It'll do all the work for you because the tires naturally want to straighten out.
Yeah. We were not supposed to teach that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because who's got the wheel?
Well, they do. You don't.
Jesus has the wheel.
You still have the will.
No, except that, because they didn't want you to autocorrect, was what that was called, autocorrecting. They didn't want that because you don't have a firm grip on the wheel, and if the problem that our instruction was looking for was if the car hits a curb and does this and turns, you can still with power steering force the wheels back straight, but not if you've let go, because then the wheel will spin by itself.
I can
see how you're going this way into traffic.
I can see how somebody might not let, because it's constant contact. You can hear it sliding in your hands. Yeah. But if you were to do that, then yeah.
Well, that's what's happened is they've discovered that people will release, because the arms of the steering wheel are heading for their fingers. So they naturally get their fingers out of the way. But if you're holding the wheel, then it yanks your hands, but then you can pull it back and you've got control. So I don't mean to override Troy, which, by the way,
it's like different martial arts schools. They say, point your toes forward, point your toes at 45-degree angle.
And I'll just say it now. I mean, the honest to goodness truth is I've never felt safer riding with anybody but Troy, or than Troy, I guess I should say. Troy is one of the best drivers I've ever been with and hung out with and been in the back seat of. And I mean, so so all of these things are just minor.
Guy sucks.
I know, I suck. My biggest problem is I've got a lead foot.
Not as much as you used to before you were a driving instructor, because I've noticed you changed, in my opinion, twice, probably 3 times, and I didn't notice the 3rd time because there was such a gap there between when you went to Japan and came back. I'm sure there was a change that happened there, but I wasn't able to observe that as much.
Yeah.
But after I became a driving instructor, I would pass on everything I'd learned. So I noticed your driving changed some for that, because you actually took what I was saying to heart. And then after you became a driving instructor, it changed even more.
It did. So. Well, and it's one of those other things you look around and you say, well, how many cars has Troy wrecked?
1.
Right?
That was a fun story. Jeff was with me.
Oh,
so, but before I tell that story, you should run our ads.
We should run our ads. Yeah. Wow, look at us going. Here I'm like, we don't have anything to say. What are we going to do this time around? Where are our damn commercials? And we should remind everybody that when we say Hexacon, just replace it in your head with Shiny Garden.
Mm-hmm.
Geek Tank is sponsored in part by Geekway Homes. If you're a geek and you need a home, contact Geekway Homes at www.geekwayhomes.com. Also, we're sponsored by Kieran Games. If you need games, this is the place to go. Contact Kieran Games at kierangames.net. And finally, we're sponsored by Hexacon 2020. Coming up MLK weekend, Hexacon 2020. We're also sponsored by people like you. If you want to help us out, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Foxblade. Thank you. Now back to the show.
All right.
2020, eh?
That's what I said. When you hear Hexagon, what you really want to think is Shiny Garden.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to fix that.
In post.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah.
We always fix those things in post. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, gosh. Now I have to remember what year it happened now, too. I'm going to guess it was like somewhere between 2005 and 2008.
Well, that's all of the years that I was in Japan.
Yeah, because I was in Group 101. So this was after the first Boulder shootout. And Group 101 was a group of filmmakers who would get together once a month and challenge each other to make a film. And they'd come up with a random word for that month. And you make a film based off of that word in some way. And Jeff was in the majority of my films, who's our good friend.
As Jeff.
And it had snowed pretty bad, but I still really wanted to go because I put a lot of work into the film that I did, and I wanted to show it to the other filmmakers.
Right.
And so, despite all of my instincts telling me I should call it off, I went ahead and went. And that includes, this is when I lived in those apartments off of Kenyon Place. I pulled up to that red light, and someone slid out into the intersection and got into a wreck. And that was like, fate saying, hey, the roads suck.
Hey, pay attention.
Home. And I'm like, I can make it. So I went to the thing. It was a fun time, but then when we left, they had remodeled the entrance there at 23rd and I-25. So it was entirely different than what I was used to. And so I wasn't sure where to merge now onto I-25. So I was going down this like frontage road, trying to figure out what was going on. And I was doing only like 20 or 30 because I knew I had to go slow. The roads are bad, but it was at a slight downhill angle. And I realized up ahead of me, about 100 feet, was one of those little triangle dividers with a sign telling you to go to the left or the right. But because of how hard the snow had hit it, the sign was plastered with snow and it was just camouflaged. And I'd gotten that close before I saw it. I was like, oh, crap. So I hit the brakes and we're like sliding. There's probably enough time that we could have jumped out of the car if we wanted to. So we're like sliding very slowly towards this thing and it's not stopping. And I'm turning the wheel. And I look at Jeff. I'm like, I can't stop. We're going to hit that thing. He's like, yep, we're going to hit that thing. Look back over at it. It's like the Monty Python thing where you keep looking out and the guy's running across the field and they're waiting. And he's running across the field. So we're sliding very slowly into it. And then my brain goes, hey, stop turning the wheel. But before I could turn the wheel back, we hit it. And that's what caused the damage of the tires getting caught by that. And so we hit the curb thingy and I took out a sign. It was like the slowest car wreck ever. And it's one of those, it's like I couldn't go any slower that I could imagine. And I'm like, well, I should have followed my instincts and just not gone.
Strangely enough, letting off the brakes.
Yeah, so the tires roll and have the traction.
That's what I would recommend.
I think I still would have hit it, but that would have been the right thing to do after not going.
That's what I would recommend. I always do that thought process on every wreck. I've had 3 accidents. None of them were my fault. And
I consider this one my fault though, because I made the choice to go.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a reason why when it starts snowing, I'm like, nope.
Yeah, you just
nope pants.
Like, I'm not even going to roll the dice. I don't care if I've got a 90% chance to make it. Not rolling the dice.
And we've had. And I'm actually kind of glad because in the 90s and the 2000s, our group was like, it's just snow, and we were all real macho about it. And now we've kind of like all no, it's snow. Don't, just don't. Which is nice because in the 90s I was like crap, and I had crappier cars back then, But I was.
I'm sorry to interrupt your 3 wrecks.
What?
Yeah, I interrupted your 3 wrecks. You were about to tell us your 3 wrecks.
That's what I was going to say. Is I try to think through how I could have gotten out of them, because the last one was my Rio, which I really liked because it was a nice shade of blue, and I have not managed yet to have another blue car since my Jesty, which was a very, very long time ago.
And for those who don't know, blue is Guy's favorite color. Yeah,
I love blue, and it was a very pretty blue, little 5-speed Rio. Anyway, we were coming back from Galveston Island on I-45 through Houston, and we were in the middle of Houston, and there's this spot where I-45 goes straight and Highway 59 goes to the left, and the left exits are already dangerous and they're scary. Any left exit off of an interstate is rough, but this was particularly nasty because the Highway 59 was backed up all the way to the interstate, but not onto the interstate yet. So they were backed up to the point where you could still, if you got into that lane, you could still get back into the interstate, which is exactly what this guy did. but we were still doing 70 on the interstate. So he cuts right in front of the truck in front of me, and the truck in front of me slams on his brakes. He has anti-lock brakes. I slammed on my brakes. We didn't have anti-locks. So I'm trying to pump the brakes. And so I'm trying to bleed off speed. And I did a pretty good job. I shoved the car just a little bit under the truck in front of me. But the UPS truck behind me had a camera, which was good because he missed me, but ended up hitting a car in the left lane. So it caused like a 7 or 8 car pile by this one guy who decided, well, I don't want to sit on 59 and wait in traffic. I'm just going to get back onto I-45. And he was at a dead stop. So he just pulls back into the left-hand lane at 5 miles an hour or 6 miles an hour or whatever. And then all of us had to dodge him. Looking back on it, the way to have solved that was what we call keeping our checkerboard. And that is, if you imagine the highway as a checkerboard and you're on the black squares, you want all the other cars in the black squares. You can be on the white squares and all the other cars have to be on the white squares. It doesn't really matter. But the idea is wherever you are, this spot is open. This spot is open. And then you only have a car here, here, and here, and here. This spot stays open and this spot stays open. Had that occurred, had I kept my checkerboard open, which I do all the time now, but I didn't know it back then, I would have just been able to dodge to the right lane and missed him entirely. Would have meant that poor UPS truck would have taken him out, but at least that would have been the thing.
Yeah, keeping your sides to the left and right is a good habit to try to get into, but there are times where traffic starts to really box you
There's
in.
nothing you can do when traffic bunches up.
Yeah, you try to give that
you do
extra
the best
space
you
in the
can.
front. You give yourself more room in front because that's all you can do.
And that's what I tend to do, is give more room to the front. The problem, of course, was even with the room that I had given in the front, there were people shifting lanes, and the truck that had gotten in front of me had just changed lanes from the middle lane.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still in the process of giving him breathing space, so to speak.
Yeah.
I was in the process of slowing down, and then he slams on his brakes, and I'm like, well, I didn't have 3 seconds at that point. He just cut in front of me at 1 second distance, so I was still at like 2 seconds, and so there was nothing I could do. I was downshifting the entire way. I was pretty proud of myself. My hand-feet coordination stuff was great.
So what was wreck number 2?
Wreck number 2 happened a long, long time ago with the Magpie. I don't know if you remember my Magpie, the silver Tradia that I had. But I was on southbound Wadsworth turning on to westbound I-70, and they had torn up all of it. So there was exactly 100 feet of merge distance to get onto to I-70 and walls. So you came around the corner and it was walls to your left. Then all of a sudden there was no walls and then 100 feet to merge. And so I had cleared the walls and was looking over my left shoulder when the lady in front of me decided she couldn't merge and stopped. Mm-hmm. So I managed to slam on my brakes, and I slid into her and spilled her coffee and bent my license plate frame. Mm-hmm. Not really what I would construe as a major accident. Right. But even the Arvada cop came out and said, yeah, no, you shouldn't have stopped, lady.
Yeah.
Just keep going. Keep going. She was like, but I wasn't sure. And he was like, well, this is what happens. Yep. And so
you gotta get your running speed up on those merge lanes. You can't be timid about it.
Yeah.
So if worst case scenario is right in the emergency lane.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't one. That was the other thing. Of course, they torn it all up, so that was part of it. I can't blame her. This was, I want to say 98 or 97, right in that area there, when they were still putting in all those flyovers to make it over so they could do the 76 to 70 thing.
Right. And there are times, because people do follow too close, you can end up with a whole wall of cars because people aren't doing any. That's another good reason every 3 to 5 seconds is it's good teamwork for letting people get where they need to go.
Right. Yep. And so that was
wreck number 2.
I'm trying to remember wreck number 3. I don't even think I had wreck number 3. I've had 2 wrecks.
This is a bad one. You have amnesia from it.
Right. So bad I have amnesia from it.
So earlier on here, well, first I'm going in backwards direction. Brent was saying he wished they taught more stick shift. Didn't you say you're having a harder time now finding stick shift cars to buy? So
well, and earlier in the show, David Coyle had talked about
auto cars. Yeah.
One of the things that I have, the reason I don't like automatics, the main reason I hate automatics is they shift gears and speeds by a governor inside the transmission that makes sort of decisions. It's like a dumb computer. But I have had more than once, I've had the automatic shift to a lower gear on snow and ice and lose control of my rear wheels because of that. It'll skip out from behind me. And so I really don't like it making that decision. That's my biggest problem. That, and you lose like 30 horsepower through all of those. The way that automatic transmissions work is effectively it's got a clutch called a torque converter, which is, if you imagine you take a fan and then you stick another fan inside it and then fill that with oil. And then one fan is connected to your motor and the other fan's connected to your wheels. And so all you do is just speed this fan up until the blade starts spinning the outside. Overcome the power curve.
Now, I haven't messed with this, but there are some automatic cars that have the option to switch to manual with the up and down gear shifts.
And all that does is just lock the gears in. And that's actually what James was saying was, you should do that. And I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it. I don't. So it really,
if it's already there,
yeah,
if it's already in the car, then
I'm
that
just
might
saying
solve
you
that
can
problem.
manually shift. I mean, I've done that before too, where you just take it and put it into one and then it won't shift down. You know what I mean? But, or at least it'll shift down on your terms, I guess I should say. But it's irrelevant really, because I actually, one of the things I have gotten to really enjoy is my wife's electric. That she's got a Nissan Leaf, and that thing is fast as all get out. Absolute 100% power transfer, and it is like a billy goat on the snow and ice.
But it's still an automatic, right?
Yeah, but you can control. It doesn't shift. It doesn't have any gears, so it's a complete curve all the way up. You can absolutely control exactly how much power is going to your wheels at any given point in time. That's all I ask. It's not. I mean, I love shifting gears. I mean, I love the I feel like I'm really driving when I'm shifting gears. But the truth is, I'm getting older. My knees are getting wilder and weaker and crankier and all kinds of stuff. So it's like, I know that it's only a matter of time before I'm not going to be able to shift as well. So I'm just, and I also know it's a matter of time. I mean, it took forever for me to, it was a good thing that I started looking for a new car in July, because I knew that my lease was up in November. And it's a good thing because it took them 2.5 months before they could find a manual. And it came in from Kansas City. So there's that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to find them. So I think we offered it at the school, but nobody ever took it up because
we had one manual that sat in our back lot for years, and then they got rid of it about 9 months before I joined. And I'm like, oh, that is a shame. I would have taught that. I would have said, well, guess we don't have any cars. Time for you to take the manual.
Yeah, back out of high school, I would have friends who had manuals, and I'm like, please let me drive your car because I want to keep practicing. I don't want to I don't want to get in that rut of forgetting how to do these things. And it's really, every car is slightly different, and you just got to know where that catch point is for the clutch on those cars. So automatic cars, I think we're still a ways off from that point to where they become both affordable and out there.
Although Teslas are getting creepily close. The latest update to Tesla Model 3 has it where it now reads signs and can make guesses. The newest update, this is the one that really gets me. Hey, Rebellious Pastry, welcome back.
I hate it when I have rebellious pastry.
That
you eat that pastry and it rebels.
It rebels. Yeah. The newest update to Teslas now is if you get in your car and you just push automatic and just let it be on auto drive, it will go to where you are supposed to be on your calendar. So if you're supposed to be at work, you just get in and push go and it'll go to work. If you're supposed to be at Troy's house, you push go, it'll go to Troy's house. I mean, that's its newest thing. That's the new update. You synchronize it with your calendar, and whatever's on your calendar, your car will go there.
This is going to be the way that like cell phones have caused me to forget people's phone numbers. This is going to cause me just to forget what I'm doing at any point in time. I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to get my car and it'll take me there, and I'll figure it out when I get there.
Yeah, I'll figure out what
I'm like, guys,
you know it's going to happen to us. We're going to show up at each other's doorsteps and be like, I don't know, my car brought me here. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Was I supposed to bring something? Snacks?
Gosh, I hope I'm not supposed to bring anything because I didn't.
I'll send the car out to get it.
Right. Well, I think that's the goal at some point for Tesla. That's one of their goals, is that they're going to have a lease version where you take your car to work, and then during the day, your car drives around town picking up people and doing the Uber thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make extra money on your car just Ubering around town while you're at work.
Because you're not using it.
You're not using it. It's well, that's what Elon Musk was saying, was like 95% of our cars' usage time is spent parked in a garage.
Mm-hmm.
95% of its life is spent in the garage. If we could use that, if we could put that out there, there'd be a whole bunch of people who would love to be able to use these cars in automatic mode. Right.
Yep.
I'm just sitting there in the driver's seat, kind of snoozing, and was that Troy's car?
That'll happen to Kevin, which has happened before, where we're both at your place and he shows up at my place.
Yeah.
So because he's still driving a dumb car.
Yeah.
So if you had a smart car, Kevin, it would have taken you to the right place.
Right. I just think that that's some of the stuff that they're doing now with Teslas are just astonishing to me. And the numbers on Teslas, that's the same thing as like the COVID stuff that we've gotten, where like Johnson & Johnson will give you blood clots. Well, yeah, it's killed 2 people so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whereas, people are like, oh no, that Tesla that wrecked exploded in a nuclear explosion. It's like,
and Elon Musk is like, so far you're in 63 million miles, we've had 1 accident, whereas humans have an accident every 22 million miles.
Mm-hmm.
So you are still 3 times safer on autopilot than you are driving your car.
Yeah, like bringing this back around to pet peeves, I actually got my driver's license later in life. I was around 18, and I had to take the German driving test, but it was in English mostly, other than like the signs I had to know in German, because those are in German.
Right.
But when it's saying like you approach a stop and this is happening, that was all in English since I was doing that. There are like over 100 signs. They quiz you on 50 and you don't know what 50 they're going to be, so you need to know them all. And I want to say, so it was 50 signs, and I want to say it was about 50 questions as well. So it was 100 total to get that's just the written part, not the driving part.
Right.
And then when I came back here, because I'd already had a driver's license, I only had to take a written test. I didn't have to do the physical test too. And it was like 20 questions, maybe 25 at the time. And they were like stupid questions of like, do you run over a person or not? It's like, this is not a real question. So one of my pet peeves is just how easy it is to get a driver's license is producing bad drivers. And
it's not just that. There's like blowback all over the place because of that. In Japan, people were flying to Hawaii and taking the driver's test, then coming back to Japan and getting a Japanese driver's license, because it was markedly easier to take the American driver's test than it was the Japanese driver's test. So when I went over there, I had 1 year on my international driver's license, and then they said, you have to take the real test And I was like, oh, okay, it's no problem. I've been driving for 20 years. I should be fine. Well, you're going to have to do it in a manual. That's not going to be a problem for me.
Mhm.
I'm good with that. Okay, well then you left it in second gear too long. You failed. And it turns out that they fail all foreigners just to kind of be sort of a, proof
Mhm.
that you're
It's like those martial arts classes that like fail you for your black belt test, no matter how good you are.
right. And it's like, So I ended up having to ride my bike to school for 6 months because, of course, they could take me in for my driver's test right away. But
Mhm.
the rescheduling, they were booked up until 6 months later. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So tell me that that's not a little bit of, xenophobia going on there. Anyway, I did pass in the second time through, which they had some cool stuff that I wish we had. They had like this S curve road with all these PVC pipes hanging down, and they had you in a taxi. I mean, that's what it was. It was we would call them the Lexus. I think they are Lexus S400s. I think is what those are. Those are like box Lexus cars. That's in Japan. Those are called Crowns. It's the same car. It's Toyota manufactures both of them. Anyway, so it was a Crown and it was a manual. And I had to go through, and you have to go through this, and the road is just a little bit wider than the car. And all they want to see is whether you knock any of those dangling PVC pipes down, right?
Mhm.
I didn't hit any of them. And I was like all excited about that, But then they one of the laws is you have to be under 10 kilometers an hour around a turn.
Mm.
Well, even in first gear, that Crown was hacking and coughing at 9 kilometers an hour. For those of you who aren't aware, 9 kilometers an hour is like 5 miles an hour. And that was just too low for even first gear on that Crown. So I was at 11 miles an hour, and they dinged me for that. And that was part of why I failed the test. So
Yeah, now I'm thinking back on it, it was 25 questions like Rebellious Pastry had said for the written one. The only question I missed, it gave like 4 different answers for blood alcohol content. And so I chose the lowest one because, in my opinion, you shouldn't drive if you're drinking, period. You should find a way around it.
One of the middle ones.
It's one of the middle ones. I'm like, oh, okay, so you can be kind of drunk.
Right?
Well, yeah, America. But yeah, that was the one question I missed on the written test part.
Japan's got us beaten on that one too. If you blow 0001 on a breathalyzer, you go to jail. Wow. And your keys are taken away for a year. And that's okay.
Well, luckily public transportation's so easy there. They
is.
don't ruin your life. You can still get to your job.
You can.
In America, cars are so tied into just being able to do things.
But I was out where there were no trains. So
don't drink for you.
Yeah. Well, and that was the best part because I don't drink generally.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that they taught me was just put your keys on the table when you're at a party, and the servers will never serve you alcohol. That's the sign that says I'm driving. And so they will keep putting tea in your glass forever. Or if you started out on soda, they'll keep refilling your soda. But it's also cultural. The other people in the party will look at you and realize that you're driving, and you don't need to say anything and lose face. All you need to do is just put your keys on the table. And as soon as you do, everybody just normally refills your cup with tea instead of beer.
I remember years ago, a lot of places would give free soda or free non-alcoholic beverages to whoever the designated driver was.
Yeah.
And that's changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we covered the automated cars. We covered the stick shift question. I was backtracking to make sure we hit all of our points. We didn't hit what much going on here. No, there's not much going on here.
Right.
I don't know how to answer that one.
Yeah. Although you did come in on the tail end of the show because we usually finish at about 9.
Yeah. Although for an unsupervised, we've had a lot of unsupervised episodes. We were more organized this time, I'd say.
Well, we had an idea what we wanted to talk about, and we're both driving instructors, and we both like to drive.
Yep.
That's like been yours and my only real major problem is like who gets to drive.
We both enjoy driving.
Yeah, we love driving, and so it's really difficult to pawn it off.
Well, it usually become whose car is cleanest.
Yes, my car is the cleanest right now.
Yeah, so if we were together, then
you've got the big vehicles usually.
Yeah,
usually you have like big vans, or you have the big Subaru, and it actually is more convenient to take yours because you can pile like 20 of us in there.
Yeah, because I have to move a tribe around. So
yeah,
that's true. Why do we ever let Kevin drive?
Yeah, have you seen him drive?
No, I don't know why we do.
So, Kevin has wrecked 6 cars now.
It's a hobby.
It's a hobby. And every one of them was his fault. Every one of them. I mean, like, and little things like the last time he got into a wreck where he lost that silver truck, which was a great truck. It was, he had taken control of the intersection. The light turned yellow. So he decided he needed to go before not going on the red. But he had oncoming traffic.
Yeah, you can't go.
Can't go. And so he was like, well, what was I supposed to do? Drive on a red light? And I'm like, yes.
Yep.
International law says that if you are in the intersection, you can complete the maneuver even on a red light. And that's everywhere in the world. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm like,
if you get a law enforcement officer that's having a really bad day, they might pull you over.
They might.
But that's
even if they do,
yeah, you could still argue.
You can fight that one in court easily.
Right.
Don't fight it with a cop.
No.
Fight it in court.
Be as apologetic as possible.
Right? Because the cop's just going to get mad.
Yeah.
But fight it in court.
Yeah,
because the cops really, there's not a lot the cop can do to, for what, where if you've broken the law or violated the law in his mind's eye, you can fight it, but you can't fight it there easily. You have to fight it in court. Go fight it in court.
Yeah, it's always choose the safe option over the legal option is what I tell the kids. I'm like, driving on the sidewalk's illegal, but if that's the only place for you to go and a truck's about to hit you from behind, drive up onto that sidewalk as long as it's clear. Don't run over people. Choose the less illegal option there.
The lesser of two illegals.
Yes. So, but in any case,
there we go.
Is it Star Trek next week? RPG?
I don't know. Brent, do you know if we're on next week? I don't think we're on again for a couple of weeks, it seems like. Let me check.
We can just let people know what to expect for next week.
Well, no, it says Klingon Game 0 next week on Thursday, so maybe.
So does that mean the Klingons got scored 0?
Well, no, Klingon Game is we're switching characters to all Klingon characters. But I don't know. I mean, a lot of us are kind of like, well, okay.
We don't really want to do that.
Bad guys, generally speaking. So it's like I don't.
Yeah, you're Federation through and through.
I am. I'm really Federation all the way through.
Could they let you be a Federation Klingon that's like on an exchange program? Like they did with Worf? Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I have to, because I could be a Federation Klingon, but I think that they want to, I think the point is that Dustin wants to rampage through the galaxy, killing people with bat'leths.
And the Federation Klingon
wouldn't do that. The Federation Klingon would be like the Urkel of that game. It would be kind of obnoxious. So I don't know. So anyway, I'm not hot on that, and I'm going to have to sit down and talk to Dustin about it because I don't generally play bad guys. I'm not interested. Part of the reason I role play and play board games and everything like that is a little bit of escapism to be the hero. So I like,
you're a bad guy in real life,
right? Because I'm a bad guy in real life, exactly. So I tend to, I don't like to play Star Wars games with anybody but the Rebels, and Star Trek I always play Federation. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like,
So tune in next week to find out what happens with guys.
Yeah, to find out whether I played it or not. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so that works. You're a really bad guy. I know. I am so horrible at bad guy. Oh, well. Okay, guys.
Billie Eilish is the bad guy, according to her song. So
I feel like feel like I suck at bad guy. Yeah. It's bad. Anyway. Okay. Well, then I will see you guys. I guess that's pretty much it. We'll see you all next week, and we'll see what happens. Well, that's all the time we've got for today. Then I've been Guy.
I've been Troy.
And this is Geek Tank.